All right, wife. This is a new day for the wheel of time. We're gonna keep going now and start off with chapter 25, which is titled Karheim. And by this point, you would know Karheim is a country and the capital of that country. So, as Rand and his group, including all the soldiers that are escorting them, approach the gates of Karheim, Hurin explains to Rand that a lot of the people that were living in this area actually moved away from their farms during the Aiel War. And apparently, the Aiel went to war with Karheim about 20 years ago. But those people didn't move back, which meant the city was just massively overpopulated. And even had trouble getting food. Rand checks in at the city gate and asks the guard if he's seen a woman, and he describes Celine. But the guy is like, I haven't seen her, but I'll keep an eye out. And at this point, maybe this was covered a little bit earlier, but a concept is introduced called the Great Game. Apparently, the politics in Karheim are very in-depth, and every action someone of note makes is analyzed and looked at by every other faction, because everyone's scrambling to stab each other in the back and make it to the top, become rich, powerful, a lord, or even king or queen. Rand doesn't want any of that. He's tired of being mistaken for a lord. Everyone's like, oh, Lord Rand, oh, Lord Rand. Even Hurin is doing it. And Rand's like, stop. I'm not a lord. Calm down. So they progress to an inn, and the innkeeper's like, oh, shit, when he sees Rand. And then he's like, oh, okay. Turns out the innkeeper thought Rand was an Aiel, but as soon as he saw like all the fancy lord-like clothes that Rand was wearing, he was like, "Oh, this is a lord, not an Aiel. How silly of me." So Rand goes out into town, and Hurin goes to get a drink. Loial stays in the room with the Horn of Valir because he doesn't want to meet any other Ogier, because Loial knows that if he runs into any other Ogier and they find out that he ran away from home originally, they're going to send a message to his mother, and his mother's going to force him to come back and force him to get married so that he stays put. Loial doesn't want that. He wants to go write a book about the ta'veren he's met, and that's his main motivation for staying around. That and the fact that he does truly consider Rand, Mat, and Perrin his friends. Loial's the best. Loial's fucking loyal as shit. And so when Rand and Hurin go downstairs to, go their way, the innkeeper says, oh, Lord Rand, you have 3 letters. Turns out they're invitations. Some of the noble houses from Karheim have invited Rand to their estates. But Rand refuses to play this great game of politics, and he throws the invitations into the fire. Hurin's like, oh, Rand, people are going to know you did that, and people are going to be pissed. Some people are going to be really pissed off that you just did that. That's, like, super disrespectful. Rand's like, I don't care, I'm not playing this game. And he leaves. Rand goes out into the city and finds it's actually pretty full of entertainment. Turns out the king provides people a lot of entertainment to distract them from the real problems in the country. He even hears the great hunt for the horn being recited by a bard, and it reminds him of Tom. And then Rand's like, wait, hold on a second. And he moves closer to the performer and recognizes Tom. And Tom recognizes him, keeps going, but gestures to a door. And Tom and Rand go in a corridor, and they talk. Rand is stunned that Tom is alive. The last Rand saw of Tom had sacrificed his life to buy them to buy Rand and Mat some time to escape Whitebridge. And Tom says, well, honestly, the Fade didn't really care about me. It wounded me, but it didn't care enough to kill. It kind of got me out of the way and then went after you guys. But I can't really walk very well because of what it did. And so he's like, I have a limp. But his after he explains that, he's like, all right, my turn. Do you still have my harp and my flute? It has been really hard to earn my living without my harp and flute. And Tom's like, fuck. All right, we'll talk about this later. I got to get back on stage. People are getting pissy that there's no entertainment going on. And so he's like, here's the inn I'm staying at, Rand. I will be there in 1 hour. Bring my harp and flute. They are mine. And he goes back on stage. Chapter 26 is titled Discord. Rand quickly hurries back to his inn and finds Hurin and Loial and tells them, Tom Merrilin's alive. He's here in Karhine. And Loyal's like, oh, you've told me so much about him. I want to meet him. And Rand's like, well, all right, let's go meet him. And Loyal's like, I'd rather stay here because Loial heard that there are Ogier in the city, and he still doesn't want to find them. And Rand's like, you can't stay here. Like, come on. And so Loial agrees, and they leave Hurin to guard the horn, because they always want to have someone guarding the horn, just in case, right? Because they know Paden Fane's after him. So Rand and Loial go to the inn where they are, and they go to Tom, and in his room, they find a woman named Denna. And she introduces herself as Tom's lover. And Rand's like, I brought Tom's harp and flute, and we kind of wanted to visit him. And Denna's like, oh, yeah, okay. He always talks about that harp and flute. Really good that you brought it back. And you find out, like, yeah, she kind of thinks of herself as Tom's lover, but also as his apprentice. And she's like, I'm going to be the first female gleeman in history. And Tom's been teaching me all kinds of things, how to play, how to recite the stories. It's been wonderful. Shortly after, Tom comes back, and he sends Denna away, being like, hey, here, I got you some knives, but you need to go pay for them. And so gives her some money, and she goes off to pay for them, so that Rand, Loial, and Tom can talk. And Tom kind of explains what's happened to him. He's like, yeah, so after Whitebridge, I went to Caemlyn, but Gil, the innkeeper of the inn that you were at, said you left with an Ogier. I guess this is him. And Loial's like, hey. He then starts bragging about Denna a little bit, and she's like, she's not going to be a gleeman. She's going to be a court bard to a king or a queen. And he starts talking about how a gleeman's life is one on the road, and that's really no life for a woman like her. And that prompts Rand to give Tom back the harp and flute. And then Rand spills the beans because he trusts Tom and says, we have the Horn of Valir. And Tom laughs, and he's like, I can take you to 3 different men who will sell you the same horn. Because everyone's after everyone's after the horn, right? And so there's a lot of fakes out there. And Rand's like, Moraine says it's the horn. And Tom's like, I'm done with Aes Sedai. Like, that's it. And then Rand's like, we're gonna take the horn back to Fal Dara in Shienar. We'd love it if you could come here, and join us. But Tom refuses. He says that time of his life is past, and he has something else to live for now, really. And he's like, thank you, boy, it was good to see you, but I have no more wish to get tangled up with these adventures and the Aes Sedai. Please leave. But Rand asks one more question. He asks Tom if Tom knows anything about the Carethian cycle, the prophecies of the dragon. And Tom repeats 2 sections of the cycle to him. And the wording of this prophecy is very, very important, and so I'm actually going to read it. It's not very long. The verse goes like this. Twice and twice shall he be marked, twice to live and twice to die. Once the heron to set his path, twice the heron to name him true. Once the dragon for remembrance lost, twice the dragon for the price he must pay. And then Tom goes into the second verse. Twice dawns the day when his blood is shed, Once for mourning, once for birth. Red on black, the dragon's blood stains the rocks of Sheol. In the pit of doom shall his blood free men from the shadow. When Rand hears this, and hears the part about the heron, he hides his hand, but he can feel the mark. He knows it's there. Rand asks again, Tom, would you accompany me? And Tom says, I'm not getting involved with the Aes Sedai. And he starts talking about his nephew. Tom had a nephew named Owen, and Owen could channel. But the Red Ajah found him, even though he never really hurt a soul. And Owen was gentled and gave up his own will to live. And he did not live. And that's caused Tom to never trust an Aes Sedai, the White Tower, and especially the Red Ajah. Rand starts to leave, but Tom's like, wait, keep the flute. You might need it to earn your supper. And he keeps the harp, but gives Rand the flute. Tom, by himself, starts to think about Rand saying how he's not involved with Aes Sedai anymore and stuff, and Tom's like, well, Rand's out of it, so am I. Chapter 27 is titled The Shadow in the Night. 3 spoopy, 5 me. Loial and Rand start walking back to their inn, and he's like, man, we gotta leave soon. I hope Ingtar comes. Fane's gonna find us eventually. And before he can even finish that thought, a Trolloc and a group of dark friends attack. Rand summons the Void and kills the Trolloc using one of the sword forms Lan taught him. The moon rises over the lakes, and the dark friends flee now that their Trollocs are gone. Rand's first thought is, oh no, Hurin's by himself. We have to get back. But a Trolloc starts trying to strangle Rand. Loial grabs the Trolloc, and Rand can't kill it because he's scared of hurting Loial. He tries to go into the Void and channel saidin, but he can't reach it. All he can touch is the oily taint on his mind. Rand tries to channel, but Loial just throws the Trolloc aside, breaking its neck. This is the very first time Loial has killed anybody. But he realizes it had to be done. Rand looks over and sees a group of performers holding a puppet that looks like a Trolloc. But as they get closer, they realize it's no puppet. That is a real Trolloc. The puppet's legs are moving too naturally. And they know, Fane knows they're here, but he's still scared of being seen. So if we're in a crowded place, the Trollocs won't be able to get us right now. They try to get around, but they keep getting surrounded by these puppets. And they're Rand and Loial are trying to use the crowd to escape a little bit. And Rand sees this large building, like a lord's manor. But Loial's like, no, that's the Illuminator's house. And Loial's like, the Illuminators are very secret. They wouldn't let the king himself inside. But suddenly, Selene steps around the corner and is like, how dare you allow the Trollocs to herd you like sheep? And Rand quickly wraps his cloak around her because she's wearing a bright white, beautiful dress. She's probably the most beautiful woman Rand's ever seen. And he's like, your dress is going to give us away, so I'm covering it. They dash inside the chapter house, trying to escape the view of the Trollocs. Loial's like, the Illuminators kill people that try to get their secrets, but they realize they can't go back. There's no option. Loial accidentally knocks over a stand with these soft-looking sticks, and suddenly, fireworks start exploding everywhere. The Illuminators try to save some from exploding, and this girl, Aludra, who seems to be in charge of everything, is blaming a guy, saying, you great buffoon, you go buy some manure, you've ruined our show. Rand tells Loial and Selene to get out of the way, and says, I'll deal with the Trollocs. He doesn't channel saidin, but he points a firework at a Trolloc and lights the fuse. The Trolloc, hit with the power of the firework, dies, and fire spreads rapidly. The entire house, the entire building is on fire. Rand joins them in the alley, escaping. but it seems Selene has gone back in. But Loyal's like, you can't do anything about it. Like, she went in. You can't go back in. It's on fire. And so they have to go back to the inn because there's no way to get back. When they go back to the inn, a letter awaits them. It has a white seal with a crescent moon and stars and appears to be written by Selene. She accuses Rand of being a dangerous man, but still says, "But you will always be mine." And then Rand's like, oh my god, I wish Ingtar would come. Because we need to get out of here. Chapter 28 is titled A New Thread in the Pattern. We go back and join Perrin and Mat and Ingtar and Verin. And Mat is looking quite pale. Verin keeps trying to heal him as they journey, but it doesn't even seem to be making a difference anymore. Perrin is using the wolves to trace the path of Paden Fane. As they're journeying, one of the soldiers, Uno, comes up to Perrin and Ingtar and says, "Aielmen in the rocks." Ingtar's like, no way, no Aiel are going to be way up here, this far away from the Aiel wasteland. But then they're like, but Uno wouldn't lie, and he's very good at his job. And when you see one bloody Aiel, there's always more you don't. And they admit, yep, the Aiel must have wanted us to see him, or I likely wouldn't have. They are far more skilled than we could ever hope to be. And they notice the Aiel is not veiled. There's like a little veil around his neck, and what you get out of that is if the Aiel pull up their veil to cover their face, it means they have the intent to kill. But Uno says that this Aiel is not veiled, and so the Aiel is not here to kill or fight us. The Aiel is wearing clothes that they describe as ones that would blend into earth or rock, so probably a dull brown, right? He has a bow, arrows, a knife, a small shield, and 3 short spears. And Aiel introduces himself as Urien, of the 2 spires sept of the Rain Aiel, and he has a red shield. You don't really need to remember any of that. He's an Aiel. Just to give you that right now. And Perrin and Mat are like, this guy looks like Rand. I think we understand now, this being the first Aiel we've ever seen. I think I get why people keep saying Rand looks like an Aiel. The Aiel Urien sees Verin and addresses her as a wise one, and says that she has the look of those who have made the journey to Rhuidean and survived. But Ingtar's like, none of this matters. Have you seen any Trollocs? And Urien's like, Trollocs, you say? South of the Blight? ? When our prophecies say, when the Trollocs come out of the Blight again, we will leave the threefold land and take back our places of old. And they understand from this context, that the threefold land is the Aiel Waste. And Urien describes it the waste as a shaping stone. It's like a testing ground to prove their worth, and it's a punishment for the sin. A sin that the Aiel committed that is so old, the only ones who even remember what it is are the wise ones and the clan chiefs. Verin's like, okay, but what's this Rhuidean you said? And he's like, that belongs to the Gen Aiel, the 13th clan. The only people that can go to Rhuidean are those that want to be clan chiefs or wise ones. Verin, not very pleased with that answer because it kind of just adds more questions, right? It's not very specific. And Urien's just like, does this mean you're going to kill me now, Aes Sedai? The old prophecies say that if we ever fail the Aes Sedai again, they will slay us. Bring your lightnings, Aes Sedai. And he doesn't seem to be afraid by this. But Verin, regardless, is like, I'm not going to kill you at all. I thought you would harm me. And he's like, how could I strike a woman who has not wetted the spear? Which kind of implies in their culture there are women warriors, which is not normal in the place where most of this story takes place, right? Urien then says, a number of us have left the Aiel Waste in search for he who comes with the dawn. It said there will be great signs of his coming. We don't know what the signs will be, but we know he will be from the west and of our blood. He will go to Rhuidean and lead us out of the threefold land. And he draws the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai on the ground, the symbol of kind of the yin yang, right? Half black, half white, and says, "Under this sign he will conquer." And he leaves. Perrin and Mat quietly talk to themselves, and they're like, "So Rand is he who comes with the dawn, right?" And they're like, "Probably." Anyway, Perrin leads the team, and they continue following the direction of the wolves. And the wolves are like, and they say this earlier too, but the wolves are like, we still see Paden Fain and the Trollocs. They're chasing Shadowkiller. And from our context, we kind of understand Shadowkiller probably means Rand. And the chapter ends. Now, chapter 29 is quite a different chapter. Chapter 29 is titled Seanchan. We go to the perspective of Geofram Bornhold, who is one of the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light, people that serve the light, hate Aes Sedai because they think the Aes Sedai are dark friends, right? Then the power is evil, that kind of thing. And they're the ones that hunted Perrin because Perrin killed 2 of their members. And they go to a town, and they find there are about 30 bodies hanging. They were all hung and killed. And he asks, who did this? And it sounds, when the man is described, it sounds like one of the Children of the Light, a questioner. And Bornhold is disgusted, but he has his orders. Obey the questioners. He orders the dead to be cut down and orders his men to ensure the villagers know no one else will harm you. And he goes up to has a villager approach and is asked, what happened? I heard there were invaders in this area too. And the man says, yes. There were people that call themselves the Seanchan. They spoke of Koren, the Return, and they appear to think that they are Arthur Hawkwing's armies from hundreds of years ago that have returned from another continent across the seas. And Bornhold is like, well, I've heard of Seanchan and this invasion that has apparently been happening by this brand new faction that we've never seen before. It says that people of the Seanchan come into battle riding monsters, and they bring Aes Sedai to rend the earth. And this is a horrifying thought, because if you recall, the Aes Sedai in our land have a rule that they can never use the One Power as a weapon unless it is to protect their own lives or that of their warder. But these Aes Sedai don't appear to follow that rule, those of the Seanchan. And then Bornhold takes his second-in-command, Child Byar, and says he means to take their entire legion to Toman Head because the Dark Friends are in Falme. The perspective shifts back to Bail Doman, if you recall. He is the boat captain. Bail Doman is near Toman Head, and finds he's being followed by a ship, and the ship he can tell belongs to the Seanchan. And he goes into shallow water thinking that ship will never follow us there. But he heard stories about how people that have encountered the Seanchan had the earth erupt in fire beneath their feet and lightning rain from the sky. He was skeptical of this at first, but then he saw the results of these in villages that they've passed. And he doesn't want any part of that. People told Bail Doman that the Seanchan said that the villagers must swear oaths, and they chose new leaders amongst the people so that they could control the villages, and anyone who said anything against them were gotten rid of. But the thing is, once people made this oath that they were told, the Seanchan normally left and never returned. And the oath was to obey the Forerunners, await the return, and serve those who come home. But even though the Shanshan normally leave, most villages do exactly what the Shanshan said, too afraid of their power to go back to their old ways. As Baal Domin tries to get into the shallow water, the sea bursts out in fountains of water and fire, and Baal Domin realizes, oh my god, our ship is going to be destroyed, and so he orders his ship to slow down, allowing the Shanshan to catch up, knowing that that was the only way to save their lives. The Shanshan board the boat. The first person is a woman in armor, which is very unusual. She checks and looks around and asks Domin, are there any women on your ship? Baal Domin says, no, there are not. And then 2 more women climb aboard the ship. One of them in a beautiful, dress kind of thing. Another drawn by a leash held by the first woman. The first woman in the armor introduces herself as Captain Ageanin. And again, you're going to have to pardon my pronunciation. Egeanin. Egeanin. I'm going to say Ageanin. I've never had to say these out loud. Oops. Yeah, and so she catches Baal Domin looking at the leashed woman and says, yes, that's a Damain. I'm very proud that I own one. Domin's like, is she an Aes Sedai? And Ageanin is like, they are only Damain, the leashed ones. And then she says, you will sail to Falme, and we will leave only 1 man aboard your ship to make sure that you do what you're told. Baal Domin asks, what does Damain do? What is that? And the man who's going to stay behind on their ship says, that's not your business. That's the business of the blood, which you kind of get to mean higher-ranking people in Shanshan. The crew of his ship are taken off the boat, and the Shanshan search it when they arrive. The search is largely led by another woman holding another leash. A leash to a brand new woman. And as they're waiting there, they see a creature appear. And they describe it as a leathery gray-green hide and a beak of a mouth and a wedge-shaped head. A giant, something that can really only be described as a monster. But it doesn't seem to want anything to do with them, and the Shanshan seem to have it under control. But when the search seems to be over of the boat, Ageanin walks off carrying something and tells Domin to follow. They go to a large building in a guarded hall, and she gives up her weapons. When they are in there, 2 men eventually enter the room, and Ageanin drops to her knees and prostrates herself with her hands at her sides, and Domin, not knowing what's going on, copies her. One of the men is introduced as the High Lord Turek, who leads those who come before and succors the return. Ageanin gives him the silk-wrapped object that she took off Baal Domin's ship, and High Lord Turek seems to be very pleased and says, this is a fine specimen. I will mention your name to the Empress. And she seems very pleased by this and leaves the room as ordered. Turek unwraps it and shows he is holding a cundular seal of the Aes Sedai shape, something that Domin used to own, a small disc that has a small round disc that looks like yin and yang, right? And Turek says, how did you find this? I own many Cuendelar objects, enough to buy a kingdom. And Domin's like, fearing for his life, he's like, please, have it as a gift. And he seems angry and says, Ageanin has already given me this as a gift. Or, But Turek is like, you can't go back into this land of oath-breakers. You will stay here in the city, and we will talk about my collection, because it is very interesting to me, and you seem like someone of interest as well, because I'm very curious how a traitor could come to possess a piece of Cuendelar. And Baal realizes he's stuck. Chapter 30 is titled Das Daimar, which is their language for the great game. Rand goes back to the inn, and the innkeeper delivers 2 letters to Rand and says, "These are from Lord Barthanes, the high seat of House Damodred, and the others from the king." And Rand is like, "I'm going to throw these in the fire." And Loial and Hurin are like, "No, no, 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 no." And Rand's like, "If I go to 1, the Karhainen are all going to be like, oh, he likes that guy. And it's going to cause a fucking ordeal, right? So I'm just going to treat them the same as the others so no one can be like, oh, I'm supporting someone." And Loial and Hurin are like, no, 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 it doesn't mean that. If you throw them away, they are going to see that as some kind of plot against people. The only reason, and it turns out Rand's been getting a lot more letters since those first 3, and he just keeps throwing them all into the fire until eventually he got these 2. And Lord Barthanes is apparently the second most powerful person in all of Karhine. So he got a letter from the number 1, the king, and the number 2, Lord Barthanes. And Hurin's like, the only reason people haven't acted against you and like tried to hurt you for your insults is because they must think you have very powerful allies if you're going to risk pissing them off, insulting them. But once you throw away the both letters of the top 2 people in Karhine, they're definitely going to do something, because they're like, oh, no one else is going to be supporting you because you pissed off everybody. And Rand's like, but I don't support anybody. Loial's like, maybe you can go to both parties that you're invited to. And Hurin's like, no, no, no. The king and Barthanes are enemies. So if you go to both, each one's going to see you as a spy for the other person. So you can't go to both, right? But you can't get rid of them. You have to pick one. So Rand goes into the common room with the letters and lets people see that he hasn't done anything with them, puts them away, and leaves the inn. He's like trying to play the game a little bit, being like, I haven't made a decision yet, so no one should be pissed off at me yet. And he goes to the gate and he's like, hey, have Selene or a guy, Ingtar, come yet? Because he describes them, and the guard's like, nope. And Rand's like, dude, this guy's totally lying to me, but I can't prove it. Like, he just knows, like, this dude is full of shit. Like, he's smirking about it as he says, and it's really pissing Rand off, but he can't do anything about it, so he just is like, all right, and he leaves. They walk, Rand, who has Loial with him, they left Hurin behind to watch the horn. They get near the inn and they see a fire. And Rand has a revelation. Oh no, Trollocs can't openly act in the city, but Dark Friends could. And they see the innkeeper carrying furnishings outside of the inn, trying to save as much as he can, but Rand doesn't see Hurin. The innkeeper is like, oh, he just must have gone out. But Rand and Loial know Hurin would never go out and leave the Horn of Valir. Rand and Loial burst into the inn that's on fire, trying to go inside to get Hurin and the horn, even though the innkeeper's like, you cannot go up there, my lord. And as they get to their room, bashing open the door, they find Hurin's body on the floor, Hurin injured, a lump on the side of his head, and the Horn of Valir gone. The Dark Friends clearly started the fire, knocked Hurin out, and took the horn in the confusion. Rand realizes, oh no, they must have taken the dagger as well. But he has another thought, and he sprints back into the room and searches and finds the dragon banner that he still had with him. Moraine said, your life may depend on it. And Rand knows Aes Sedai never lie. While he doesn't want to be a false dragon, he also doesn't want to test the alternative there. He also snatches up his saddlebags that have the Tom's flute and runs out of the door. As he leaves, the ceiling caves in. Rand makes it out into the street, begging everyone, find someone that can help Hurin. And then, as they are panicking, Perrin, Mat, and Ingtar come up to the inn. And Rand starts to laugh. You came too late. And continues to laugh in his despair. Chapter 31 is titled On the Scent. Rand sees Varen only after he feels like he's been doused with cold water. It turns out Varen healed him, and he feels a little weaker, but strangely better. She then goes up to Hurin. Mat asks, "How did you get to Karhine?" And Rand's like, "Let's maybe not talk about it here necessarily." Rand's like, "How'd you find this inn?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we asked a guard at the gate and said I was Ingtar." And the guy was like, "And we described you." And the guy was like, "Oh no, I've never seen you." He was clearly lying. He had a smile the whole time, and Varen was able to, quote unquote, persuade him to say where you all were. Mat asks about the dagger, and Rand says, "I had the dagger, and I lost it. I also lost the horn," but he doesn't say that directly because there's other people that could be listening. But he's like, they took both things. They continue on, and they go to a different inn. And Loial has a somewhat of a revelation. He's like, "You know what? The Dark Friends must not have been able to open the chest. If they could, they would have just taken the horn and maybe the dagger. They wouldn't have taken the entire chest with them. That's incredibly heavy to do." And Rand's like, you're probably right." Rand gets to a new room, changes clothes, and gets clean, and then he finds Celene's letter in his clothes and wonders how he could have been such a fool, and thinks to himself, if I could marry any woman, it'd be Egwene. He then throws the letter into the fire, and goes to get dinner. When he gets to the dining room, Rand starts apologizing to Ingtar because Rand's been giving commands, and Ingtar just looks at him like not really that concerned about it, to be honest with you. And Varen starts asking, "How did you disappear without a trace?" And so Rand starts explaining what happened. But in his story, Selene activated the portal stones instead of Rand. And Perrin finds himself wishing, hearing all this and knowing Rand's secret, finds himself wishing that he could tell Rand about the wolves, because that would only be fair. And Perrin finds, as dinner is served, he actually doesn't even want their cooked food. He has a large craving for rare meat. Hurin comes back into the room shortly after and says, "I tracked them. I know where they are. They're hiding in a manor, the manor of Lord Barthanes." Ingtar doesn't even believe it, but Varen's like, lords give their souls to the shadow just as often as the weak do. And, they're debating, like, how do we get in there? And Varen's like, "Oh, if I let slip to someone that an Aes Sedai would like to see this manor, I could probably get an invitation." And Hurin's like, "Oh, we don't need that. Rand already has an invitation." And Ingtar's like, "What have you been doing?" And Rand's like, No, they just sent them to me. It wasn't me." Varen then burns the king's letter so that they accept Lord Barthanes. Rand's like, "I'm just a shepherd. I'm not a lord. No one will think I'm a lord." And Varen's like, "People see what they expect to see, not to be surprised." And Rand's like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So they start to change the topic, and Rand actually tells Varen about that giant statue they saw on the way to Karhine of the person with the sphere. And Varen explains that statue is actually a Sa-Angreal, one of a pair, the two largest Sa-Angreal ever made. One's on an island long way away and can only be used by a woman. Only a man can use the one buried here in Karhine. If they were used together, they might give the channelers enough power to break the world again. Perrin looks over at Rand, knowing that, he is Shadow Killer at this point that the wolves were looking for. And he's like, that Lord's coat really fits him now. Chapter 32 is titled Dangerous Words. Rand goes to the party with some of the people, right? And Ingtar goes with him because he's, a man of high stature, so he's a good guest to have. Loial goes because he's an Ogier, and that adds prestige. Hurin comes because he can sniff out the dark friends, and Mat goes because he'll be able to sense when the dagger is nearby. Verin also comes to keep them all out of trouble. Mat and Hurin are there disguised as servants, but Mat's like, if Rand gets to be a lord, why can't I pretend to be a lord? I can put on a fancy coat. But they eventually convince him. They're like, servants can go places lords can't, because no one notices a servant. And Mat finally is like, fine. They enter the party and see many, many nobles here. It seems to be like the who's who party, right? And Lord Barthanes comes up to them and introduces himself, and he's like, perhaps we'll be able to speak later. But he goes to greet additional guests. Loial then speaks up and tells Rand quietly, I can sense a waygate nearby. And he goes off to try to find it in the crowd, and Rand is left alone. Everyone's trying to talk to Rand, but Rand's like, I gotta go. And he starts trying to get away, but Lord Barthanes catches up to him. They start to have a conversation with Lord Barthanes trying to figure out Rand's intentions, and Rand, just being really very simple in his responses, essentially unintentionally convinces Barthanes that Rand is very good at playing the great game. He eventually leaves Rand and says, you have given me much to think on, and walks away. But Rand's thinking to himself, I have no idea how this great game is played. I just want to leave. Rand looks down from a balcony and actually sees Tom is there. He's reciting the Great Hunt of the Horn. Because, he's basically a bard as a gleeman, right? Somewhat. And a woman comes up and asks Rand, can you play the flute? And Rand realizes, oh yeah, I did mention to the innkeeper I play originally. And these people must have spied and learned about that, and so now they think I do that. And this woman is like, I'd very much like to hear you play while my husband is sampling his own vineyards. And Rand's like, I don't want to. But before he can even refuse, another woman comes in, and she's like, why don't you just come back with me and we can have some drinks? And the first girl is like, you have the subtlety of a tavern wench. And then another woman comes in, and she's basically like, let's go to my room. So there's these three women approaching Rand, and Rand's like, I gotta go talk to a friend. And he just fucking bolts out of there basically as quick as he can. He finds Tom, and before Tom can even be like, I don't want any part of this, Rand's like, don't worry, I just wanted to get away from these women. By the way, Tom, Lord Barthanes is a dark friend. And Tom's like, shh, that's very dangerous to say. Hurin approaches Rand, cutting their conversation short, and says, I'm sorry, Lord Rand, your manservant had a fall. Could you please follow me? And Rand's like, thank God, there's an excuse to leave, because it's clearly a ruse to go find the horn. Chapter 33 is titled, A Message from the Dark. As they get alone and go down some stairs, Hurin says he's tracked the Dark Friends and the Trollocs in the garden. They haven't left the garden, so they must still be there. But Mat is like, I can't sense the dagger, and Rand's like, well, maybe you can't sense the dagger because it's in the chest with the horn, trying to calm Mat down a little bit and ease his anxiety. Hurin points to where the last place the Trollocs smell is, and Loial's like, oh, it seems they went into a waygate. I did tell you this was an Ogier grove before that was cut down. Mat goes to find Verin and Ingtar to get them down here, and Rand continues on, getting closer to the waygate, and they realize we have to go into the ways to follow Paden Fane. So Rand walks up to the waygate, and, Hurin's like, we should not do this, and he's like, I've done it before. And to prove it, Rand takes the leaf off of the waygate, and it opens. But they don't see the faint shimmer. Instead, they see black wind. And they hear mutterings in this wind. Blood so sweet to drink the blood. And there's another whisper, even fainter, like almost like it's an undercurrent of the main whisper. Althor, Althor, Althor. Rand drops the leaf in shock and embraces the void and saidin, and he doesn't even realize what he's doing, but he hurls some kind of weave of the one power into the Waygate, and the black wind, Mashin Shin, shrieks 10,000 wordless howls. Rand continues to embrace saidin until he sees the Waygate begin to close as Loial puts the leaf back onto the gate. As this happens, Rand claws his way out of the void, letting go of saidin. Rand realizes they can't follow Paden Fain through the ways. Mashin Shin is literally there waiting for us. And Loial's like, this is not normal. Mashin Shin wanders the ways. He doesn't wait as a trap. But they realize there's nothing more they can do. And so they're like, all right, we're leaving. They go back to the main party to try to get to the exit. And Barthanes pulls Rand aside. And he says, I have a message from a man. I normally wouldn't carry a message from this type of man. And he describes him, and Rand recognizes it as Paden Fain. The message states that Fain has taken the horn to Toman Head, and Rand must follow him there. If he doesn't, Fain has promised to hound your blood and your people until you do. But it doesn't say that Fain has the horn, so Barthanes is like, what does he have? And Rand's like, good night, and leaves. They go back to the inn, and Verin is like, what happened? And Rand's like, Mashin Shin was there, and she's like, no one can control the black wind, Mashin Shin. We don't even know what it is. But Ingtar doesn't really care. He just knows they can't follow and thinks the horn is lost. I am lost. But it's at this time Rand explains the message he was given. But Ingtar doesn't seem to believe it. He just says, Ingtar just says it's a trick. But Rand's like, no, it's true, and I'm getting to Toman Head now. Loial, Mat, and Perrin are like, hell yeah, I'm going. Yeah. Verin then speaks up and says, and she thinks about the writing that was on the wall in Fal Dara and says, I believe we will find the horn there. She's like, I want to follow Fain, and we can use a different Waygate, the one outside of another steading. Then we can avoid Mashin Shin. Loial's like, I don't want to do that, but she's like, no, we're doing it. And so they're like, okay. They all go to their rooms, but Rand and Verin are left, and Rand asks Verin, why is Mat still sick? And she says, Mat only has another few weeks to live at most. The healing didn't work as well as we had hoped it would. He's still connected to the dagger. And Rand's like, I just want to be done with the Aes Sedai. Chapter 34 is titled, The Wheel Weaves. And we go to the perspective of Tom. And Tom goes back to the inn after performing in the manor, and he's just, in his mind, just bitching about the nobles. He's like, they laughed at all the wrong places, and at him, and they were asking questions about Rand and Tom's like, I don't even know if I was smart enough to avoid giving more information than I wanted. But he goes back and goes to his room and finds Denna there, lying on the bed with a gash across her throat. The door next to Tom creaks, and he turns quickly and throws knives that he held in his sleeve, killing a man instantly and injuring another. The second man, clearly an assassin, tries to run away, but Tom grabs him and stabs another blade into the man's eye. But he asks quickly, why were you here? And the man says, Dice Damar, nothing against you, personal. Also, sorry, he's holding the blade against the man's eye. He didn't stab him. I didn't make that very clear. Yeah. And the man tells him that Barthanes sent him to find out about this Andoran lord, clearly meaning Rand. But Tom's like, why would he do that? He could have just asked me. I was just there. And then he's like, well, you made one more major mistake. killing Denna, and then he stabs the assassin in the eye, killing him. The innkeeper sees what happened at this point coming up, and she's like, Tom, you have to leave the city. But Tom's like, no, I have another man to kill. But the innkeeper says, you can't kill Barthanes, because she overheard. She's like, you can't kill Barthanes. He's already dead, torn to pieces in his bedchamber with his head stuck on a spike. You have to leave. Tom then gives her a bunch of money and says it's for Denna's funeral. And Tom leaves. The perspective then shifts to Paden Fane. And Paden Fane has already made it to Falme, which is the west, right? Which is where Toman Head is. And Fane's seeing all the Seanchan, and he heard rumors about them, but he's like, wow, they are different. They're riding creatures that are definitely not horses. They're letting the people they conquered wear swords. Apparently, the Seanchan believe that if someone has sworn these oaths, they don't even need to be watched. They gave their word. Fane goes to the most important building, which is clearly owned by the High Lord Turok, as he got from talking to some of the people in the town. And the guards let him in after seeing that he wants to provide a gift to High Lord Turok, a chest containing the horn and a dagger. And they're like, wow, a gift fit for the Empress herself. He goes up to Lord Turok, and Turok's like, you look pretty shabby. And he's like, well, looking shabby, let me get this chest to you without being attacked, because no one thought I had anything valuable. Fane's clearly lying, right? And so he's like, please take this chest. I haven't been able to figure out how to open it, but I am close to learning how. Oh yeah, he didn't show the actual horn and the dagger to the guys earlier. He just showed the fancy chest, I'm sorry, to the guards earlier. And so Turok goes up and he's like, I've seen these kinds of chests before. Click. The chest opens. Fane is angry because it lessens his position. Some servants bring the horn onto a table and the dagger, and Fane reaches for the dagger, knowing that it's a part of him, and one of the servants smacks Paden Fane for touching Lord Turok's property. Fane says the dagger's mine, but Turok doesn't quite believe him. Why would his possession be inside a chest he couldn't open? But the High Lord Turok says, if you tell me the story of how you came across this and it's interesting enough, perhaps I will give you the dagger. Paden Fane explains this is the horn of Valir, and if you sound it, you would have great power. Paden Fane then spins a tale for Turok. He says that his family, through the ages, served the High King, Artur Pendraig Tanrial, which is Artur Hawkwing, and they never relinquished their oaths. And the oaths that his family gave said to await the return of Artur Hawkwing's blood, the Seanchan. And when the Seanchan return, his Paden Fane's family is to serve and advise. And since the Seanchan are the descendants of Artur Hawkwing's armies, Paden Fane is here to serve and advise the High Lord Turok. He says the horn was kept by his ancestors, passed down from generation to generation, just for you. Turok doesn't really believe it, but he does seem to believe the horn is real. Paden Fane is like, Turok is like, I'm not sounding the horn, because whoever sounds it is linked to it forever. If I blow it, how could I present it to the Empress? You know, I'm only 12th in line for the throne. The person most likely to be Empress after the current Empress is Tuon, her second daughter. Then if I sounded it, they'd think I'm trying to upset that balance and then probably come to kill me, so I'm not going to do that. So Paden Fane gets away with his bullshit story about family history and serving the Seanchan. Even if Turok doesn't believe it, he's like, whatever. And Fane is like, Turok is like, come back tomorrow. Give me more tales of your family and tradition. And then and he's like, you may leave. But Fane is like, one more thing, sir. There are dark friends trying to find the horn. They're led by a man named Rand al'Thor. And Turok is like, all right, we'll be on watch. And so Paden Fane has successfully turned Falme into a trap.